Welcome back, everybody. This is now the third masterclass of the day. We are grateful to the forum's social partner, Samruk Hazina Trust Social Development Foundation, for supporting these masterclasses. Please do remember that you can ask questions in the audience, and there are questions online in the chat box. And please remember to turn off your mobile phones. Our next masterclass is going to be presented by Salah Khalil. Salah is founding executive chairman of Macat International, a company that develops academic content in the social sciences and humanities. Macat is a world leader in critical thinking solutions that transform the way people learn, work, and live. Macat offers professionals and learners worldwide a learning, assessment, and development ecosystem. This imparts the knowledge and skills that advance critical thinking with precision by placing them on a robust, evidence-based learning path. This builds a foundation on which other essential 21st century skills can be developed. Please welcome Salah in delivering this next masterclass on why critical thinking. Thank you, Salah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sue. The first thing to say is that critical thinking is quite a difficult subject because people talk about it all the time, but they really don't get into the details of what critical thinking is about, why it's important, how it could be helpful in personal lives, in professional lives, and elsewhere. So just before I start my presentation, I'd like to show you a short video that we prepared that gives a little bit of an indication of what critical thinking is about. Then I will go into the details of the presentation and walk you through what critical thinking is, why it's important, how it can be applied, how it can be assessed, how it can be taught, and what is the impact of doing all this. And maybe at the end, if we have some time, I will also talk about an example from the media, a story in the media, and also about an organization that I have helped create called Al-Fanar Media as well, which is a media organization that covers education news in the Arab world. So can we play the video, please? So I just press play.
Critical thinking is all about asking questions. The right questions. Questions that help you assess both the meaning and the significance of claims and arguments. Building these skills and applying them in your life makes it easier for you to assess evidence, evaluate arguments, and adapt your thinking so you stay switched on and engaged in different situations. Critical thinking involves stepping back from a situation to enable you to see all the angles before making judgments or taking decisions. It means identifying the key points, analyzing the sources of information, weighing up different types of evidence, just as a judge and jury would do in a court of law, and putting it all together into your own independent, thought-through point of view. One thing that it's very important to realize is that critical thinking isn't about being critical. And it's about much more than just finding flaws in other people's claims. By itself, that isn't enough to give you an edge. To be a true critical thinker means being creative, reflective, and adaptable, evaluating the evidence to decide for yourself what is accurate, what is relevant, and do I have sufficient information to take a decision on this topic. Thinking critically means taking a stand for yourself. It can be difficult not to be swayed by close family or friends' views on things, or certain beliefs that just feel right. But learning how to use these higher-order thinking skills can help you to feel much more confident in your own opinions and conclusions. Critical thinking is also about a sense of discovery and excitement, not only about learning, but evaluating arguments to see how they stand up. and filtering for yourself what resonates as right or wrong. By using these techniques, you'll find yourself becoming a clearer, better thinker. Macat. Learn better, think smarter, aim higher.
Okay, thank you. So this is just a brief introduction to the topic of critical thinking, and now we'll go into the presentation. This first slide is basically about the importance of critical thinking. It steps aside and looks at the main meaning of critical thinking, which is, simply put, thinking about thinking. So evaluating your thought process, making sure that the thought process is clear, objective, free of bias, and free of cognitive biases, and is able to achieve what is intended to achieve, which is making wise choices on the personal level, on the professional level, and elsewhere. So if you look at it in general, it basically helps you do two main functions. One is you are doing things in the right way, right? So whatever you're doing it right. But more deeper than this, it's about doing the right things. So it's actually stepping back and seeing, okay, I've done all this, but is this leading me to where I want to go? Is this doing what I had intended to do? Why is it important on a global scale? There's been a lot of studies released by Accenture, the World Economic Forum, OECD, PricewaterhouseCoopers. All these people are predicting a global skills crisis that is going to take place in 2030. This global skills crisis says basically, if we do not train 85 million people out of the global workforce, which is 3.7 billion people, if we don't train those 85 million people, the cost could exceed $8.5 trillion. We all know that the International Labor Organization and the World Bank has said that in the global workforce, there is almost 30% or 1 billion people that are in vulnerable employment. What does this mean? Well, this simply means that the crisis that's going to happen in 2030 is not going to be $8.5 trillion. It's not going to be 85 million people. It's going to be more like 600-700 million people and more like $50-60 trillion. Just to put this into perspective, the magnitude of this crisis will be equivalent to 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, and the COVID-19. Now, what causes this crisis, and why is this gap continue to increase between the skills that we have today and the skills that we will need in 2030? There are a number of forces, that actually make this happen. So the first one is globalization and its effect on employment. Now, we're all aware that globalization makes job competition more effective and more fierce than it used to be. If you're in a town and you're going to seek a job or look for a job, then your competition was within this town. But then with online and working remotely, that competition moved to a national level, perhaps a regional level, or even a global level. I mean, we have seen recently with COVID-19 that remote working has been a global phenomenon. So what this says, that globalization makes employability and the competitiveness of employability hard or larger, thereby requiring the need to skill and upskill to continue to keep that job or to continue to find a job. The second issue is demographic changes. And in demographic changes, we're looking at one generation is entering the labor force and one generation is exiting the labor force. This change was very slow 10 years ago. Now, with Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and now Koreans, generations are coming into the workforce faster than before, and there is pressure on generations, older generations, to exit the workforce. What does this mean? This means if you want to keep your job and more people are coming into the workforce, well, you have to again remain competitive. That means there is a stronger need for skilling, upskilling, and reskilling. The third element is digital transformation. And this is really important because this is actually the most striking feature of the global skills crisis. In the past, most economies were powered by human intelligence. In the future, depending who you talk to, people will say that actually artificial intelligence might be the way forward and will probably replace human intelligence totally. If you're talking about post-humanism or a strand of it called transhumanism, sees that human beings cannot be actually enhanced and will therefore, like any other species subject to extinction, will be replaced by machines. So there is a constant battle in the future between mind and machines. So essentially what we need to do, we need to be able to do things that machines cannot do or cannot do as well as we do. But if we continue to do things and invest in skills that are actually going to be replaced by artificial intelligence or machines, then our skills are going to decay, and this investment is a waste of money. So we need to invest in skills that are future-proof, or skills of the future. Just to take this further, it's not human intelligence only, it's not artificial intelligence only, but the new economy will be powered by augmented intelligence, which is a combination of human and artificial intelligence subject to context. In certain contexts, human intelligence will be more. In other contexts, artificial intelligence will be more. But the main goal for people who are interested to keep jobs, grow in their jobs, and get promoted is actually to hone in the skills that are going to work well in an economy that's powered by augmented intelligence. The fourth thing is COVID-19, which has done two things. One, it has increased the appeal of online activities dramatically. Students are studying online, people are shopping online, personal calls and family connections are happening online. So everything was actually done, almost everything was done online. And that has accelerated digital transformation. The other aspect of the digital transformation or COVID-19 is the fact that it actually put a lot of people out of work. Therefore, by putting a lot of people out of work, it has created the need for more skilling, upskilling, and reskilling as well. Finally, the on-demand economy. And by this, I mean that the future economy will be one where permanent jobs will not be a prominent feature of. So essentially, if you want to think about the future economy, you should be looking at a management consultant model, whereby a project is there, people join in that project, and once the project ends, people disperse. And there is a lot of work right now like this. I mean, when management consultants started out after World War II, there was one management consultant to every 60 or 70 managers. Today, there is one to every 13. So you can see that this is largely expanding, and you can also see that management consultants taking leading positions in blue chip companies. So the future is definitely geared towards this type of work. What does this mean? That means you have to, again, be very versatile. Today you could be working in a sector, then tomorrow working in another sector. Today you could be working on a problem, tomorrow you could be working on another problem. Therefore, this cognitive flexibility and resilience, you will be able to get a job a lot easier, but this requires also that you have the skills that allow you to do this. So again, requires skilling, upskilling, and reskilling. In short, this is not a gap that's closing, this is a gap that's widening. And the problem will continue to widen unless action is taken in investing in the right skills. Now, there is another reason for this, and if we look at the two main authorities in learning and in thinking, which is for learning, OECD, and for thinking, it is the World Economic Forum. If you look at the basic statistic, 40% of current worker skills are expected to change in the next 5 years. 40%. That's a really large number of change. If you look at the top 10 skills in 2025, according to the World Economic Forum, all the skills that are in blue are critical thinking skills. If you look at what OECD PISA, which is a report that measures all education systems around the world, if you look at this report, the title of it, Critical and Creative Thinking, in 2023. So there is a complete consensus in the professional world and in the education world that if you want to learn and if you want to think, you need critical thinking. Now, there's another challenge in both learning and thinking, because if we are competing with machines, we have to not only learn wide and deep, but also fast. So if you look at the learning paradigms that exist today, there are two learning paradigms. The first one is the Industrial Revolution paradigm. The education learning is based on a T model, where the upper side of the T are the different subjects, and the lower stem of the T is how deep you go into a subject. With this Industrial Revolution model, we are more and more focused on specialization. You get people, when they reach PhD, they're answering a simple question out of a huge topic. If you look at the knowledge economy and what it's driving us towards, is that you don't need to go so deep into one topic, you need to know very little about many topics. But if you look at the new economy, you will need to go wide, deep, and fast as well. And all those three are powered by critical thinking. Because if you don't get the width and depth, you will not be able to get the speed. The speed is meaningless. So that's, again, another reason why critical thinking is important. Not just because it's a global crisis that's going to happen in 2030, but also because all the leading authorities worldwide say that it is the skill to invest in because it's future-proof. It will not decay with time. This is extremely relevant, for example, for a country like Kazakhstan. If the crisis is almost $50–60 trillion worldwide, if Kazakhstan prepares its workforce and its educational institutions to train and assess these skills well and continuous, it could be ahead of the game. And hence, employability will be, unemployment will be negative if you can get to the right approach with this. Universities will be giving the workforce what they need, not what they think they need. It's actually giving them skills that are going to be used in work, that are going to help them make better choices, better decisions, and choose people in the right way, in recruitment, in decision making, and many of the other aspects that they use in work. We at Macat, we have been working for the last 12 years with the University of Cambridge and many others to develop a proper definition of critical thinking, one that is skills-based. So the research basically looked at the literature and to see who has written what about critical thinking, what kind of research exists about critical thinking right now. And we found that the bulk of research on critical thinking comes from 3 disciplines. The first discipline is philosophy. The second is psychology, and the third one is education. Each of these disciplines have a different conception of critical thinking. Philosophy, for example, is focused on critical thinking in terms of perfections of thought, the perfect thinking, the best thinker, the ideal thinking situations. Psychology, on the other hand, is focused on actions and behaviors that critical thinkers do. Education is more focused on information processing, where you have a pyramid of information processing. At the bottom of the pyramid is regurgitating, or just learning by rote, so repeating what you learn. And at the top of the pyramid is analytical comprehension. Although those 3 disciplines don't agree on the definition of critical thinking, they agree on one thing. And that thing is that critical thinking is a set of skills and dispositions or behaviors. So we worked with the University of Cambridge and did a study asking the top 50 professors in each of these disciplines worldwide to define critical thinking skills in details. And the end of the study, we came up with this model called PACER, which stands for 6 skills, including problem solving, analysis, creative thinking, interpretation, evaluation, and reasoning. Now, this was a big step for us because this is the most comprehensive framework of critical thinking that exists in the world today. We didn't stop at just identifying the 6 skills, but we went further. And we did a whole framework of these skills by identifying 4 sub-skills under each of the main 6 skills. So essentially you have a thinking toolbox of 24 sub-skills that you can use in sequence, that you can use in concert, so you can use 1 or 2 or 3 skills together, but you can use them in one sequence and then change the other sequence. So there is a multitude of ways this system can be used and applied. We then took this framework and we designed the process called test, teach, and track. And then with this process, we designed 3 products. Assessments. So this basically is a 1-hour online test that you take and you get a critical thinking profile. Then we put together a critical thinking library, which is made of analysis of seminal works in the humanities, arts, and social sciences. And the reason we made these analysis of these original books, because these are the books that are taught in the best universities worldwide. So Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Oxford, Cambridge. If you go study psychology, these are the books you would read. If you go study philosophy, these are the books you would read. But these books are very difficult. So instead of summarizing them, we analyzed them. And we did another study with the University of Cambridge that showed that by spending 8 hours or 1 day reading in the library, you improve your critical thinking skills by 12%. The library has Routledge on it, so it has the emblem of Routledge, which is Taylor and Francis, which is the most prestigious academic brand in humanities, arts, and social sciences. The library has been translated into Chinese with Shanghai Foreign Language Education Press, into Arabic with Akhbar al-Yom and the Library of Alexandria, and other language deals are happening right now. Additionally, we have signed large contracts with governments that are interested in helping large number of students. So for example, in Egypt, we've signed a contract to measure and develop the critical thinking of 1 million students in higher education. In Morocco, we've just signed another contract that will look to see us do the same thing with about 700,000 students in higher education. And the same in other countries in the Arab world, and the same with countries in Muslim majorities as well. We are starting a trial with King Abdulaziz University, which is ranked #1 in countries with Muslim majority universities. So we're doing a trial with them, and once that trial takes place, then obviously we're going to expand beyond that. Okay, sorry about the grimness of the topic, but I just wanted to give you a specific example about a story. So for example, if you look at the 2 issues that everyone was looking at when COVID started coming out, and who were the most vulnerable people? And the most vulnerable people were old people and people with pre-existing conditions. But this is the power of media, because media can present itself on 3 levels. Well, the first thing is then you can report facts. If someone dies, you report the fact. And one level, this fact could be the medical reason for their death. But there's another level which you can look at, which would be looking at the habits and behaviors that led this person to this position in the first place. Of course, you can't do much about age, but you can do a lot about staying healthy. There is a third level, which is even a deeper level than this, which is the societies that actually led to this behavior, or promoted or developed these behaviors and these habits. So this is the power of critical thinking. It can actually go up, it can go down. So it can take what is on the surface, but it can actually help you go deeper to uncover the truth and open up layers of understanding and layers of information. It can help you in fast thinking, such as rally drivers, football players, fighter pilots, and it can help you in slow thinking, such as a judge and a court proceedings, or a parliamentary session on issuing a law, or a medical committee to decide on a vaccine release and policy. So it is actually a skill that is going to stay with us in the future, and the more we spend time with this skill, the better prepared we are for the new economy. I don't want to go into a lot more details, because I know the subject is not really, you have a lot more interesting stuff going on here. I mean, the presentation or the master class before me was just, so heartwarming, and it just really touches you in such a way. This is a very rigid topic, but it's really important as well, because a lot of the situations the world is in right now could have done with wiser choices. You know, if people had the toolbox to think through things and the intentions to do things in the right way and do the right things as well, we wouldn't be in the position we are in today. I hope I didn't take too long and I didn't bore you with this, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Salah. We actually have 3 questions online, so I will ask them to you. The first question, you said that critical thinking can be taught, hence the question, does the quality of this training depend on mentality, cultural code? In other words, does the quality of critical thinking depend on what nationality a person is?
This is I get this question all the time, by the way, but it's a very good question. No, actually, the short answer, this is not like IQ. IQ, you are born and you die with IQ. This critical thinking is actually something that that works with brain plasticity. The mind, the plasticity of the mind. So the mind is the only muscle that the more you use it as you grow older, the better it becomes. So no, this is actually open to anyone at any level, and it's not this is a good score, this is a bad score, this is where I am today, and this is how I can develop. If I don't score high, that means I've got all this opportunity to grow and develop and become better and earn more and have better relationships and so on and make wiser choices. So I would say that that's a no.
Another question, what is the importance of critical thinking in people of certain professions? For example, politicians, presidents, people who make many decisions every day that affect millions of destinies.
Another excellent question. Critical thinking is taught in one of 2 ways. There is domain agnostic critical thinking instruction, which means that it's multidisciplinary or across subjects. It's generic critical thinking teaching. So for example, you would be learning critical thinking across all the humanities and social sciences. And then there is subject-specific critical thinking. And that could start with a specific subject. So, for example, we worked with the London School of Economics to develop a critical thinking course for economics. But then you can also do a critical thinking course for a sector, like oil and gas. And then you can do a critical thinking course for a job, like a mayor or, or a member of parliament, or a governor. So you can do generic, or you can do subject-specific, or you can do both. And obviously, the more you do, this helps give you, the generic helps give you the width and depth of learning, and the subject-specific, makes the depth even stronger. So you can do both.
You had mentioned earlier, there is another question online, but before I go to that, you had mentioned earlier that in terms of it being job specific, presumably, as this is a media conference that we're attending, and there's lots of journalists probably in the room and listening online, that it can be job specific to journalists, and maybe you could just expand a little bit on that. And perhaps you had also mentioned that you have a company called Alphanar Media,
sure.
That is a media company for education in the Arab world, and perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about that too.
Sure, thank you. So I was approached by a journalist in the US who used to work for the Chronicle of Higher Education. For those of you who know the Chronicle or don't know the Chronicle of Higher Education is a media organization that covers education news in the United States of America. Now, this person told me that there isn't such an organization that covers education news in the Arab world. And knowing that education is a really important topic wherever you go, whether it's in Arab, in the East or the West, I thought that that's really very strange that in the Arab world there isn't one specialized media organization. And I set out with a group of trustees in a charity, in a UK charity, to help set up an independent news organization in English and in Arabic to cover education news in the Arab region, which encompasses 22 countries. 10 years later, and after securing almost $8 million in funding, we now have a whole website with 3,000 stories in Arabic and in English, covering different aspects of education, from the quality of teaching, free education, online education, scholarships, research, all kinds of different topics. But what's the use of that? Well, the use of that is that this has opened a huge area for cooperation, for telling that there are actually islands of excellence in the Arab world, despite what's being said, but also for giving cautionary tales of things that started out looking really good and ended up to be a disaster. So these are lessons learned. So it has had a tremendous impact on making this contribution to an area that didn't have this information before, and now it's helping students in the Arab world find scholarship across the world. So we have a web resource we've created for Arab students that in one page they can find all the scholarships available to all Arab students. We also have done another web resource that shows parents, if you're sending your son or daughter to a university in the Arab world, is this university accredited, and by whom, and what does this accreditation look like? For refugees, for example, that have left their country and without any certification in certificates of education, we help them try to get the certificates so that they can continue their education and it doesn't get disrupted. So I think I'm extremely proud of what Al-Fanar has achieved, and it's not the end, because we've just moved from succession from an American who was leading this organization to an Egyptian now, who was in Reuters for 27 years, she's leading the organization right now, and she's taking it to the next level. So we've raised funds, we've had impact, and we've done succession, and now we're moving forward. Why was all this there? Well, there was a lot of critical thinking involved, let me tell you, and a lot of choices. Some of them were not so good, but they were documented, and we learned from them and we moved on. And some of them were really good because we employed, a proper thinking toolbox in making these decisions.
Thank you. The third question online is, what 5 skills do you recommend developing for our modern generation to win the competition with machines in the future?
Well, precisely the skills that we've just mentioned in the model. So the first one is problem solving. I have examples of how this applies, and I can give you examples if you just give me a second. Sorry. Yeah. So let's start with problem solving. Problem solving, or the ability to understand the nature of problems and using this understanding to generate solutions. One aspect of problem solving, and this is something that will resonate with in this conference, is asking productive questions. So you can ask a question, a yes/no question, and you're not really going to get any information. But if you ask a productive question, whether it's an open question or a leading question, you will end up getting a lot more details and a deeper understanding of the problem, and hence you can provide solutions. So the second one is analysis, or the ability to understand how an argument is built. There is no global warming, or there is global warming. The arguments could be stacked on one side, the arguments could be stacked on another side, and then you can make a decision. The arguments are structured in a way that you have to deconstruct them to understand what's behind and to be able to do that. And that's a very important aspect of analysis. The third one is creative thinking. And this is the drive of all human progress since the beginning of time. Innovation was the key for us to move from someone who could not light a fire to someone who sent people to planets. So this is really a very important skill to have, the ability to make connections between things that are not connected now and to create new value. And that's another skill that definitely a skill that will stay in the future. The fourth skill is evaluation, the ability to explore strengths and weaknesses of an argument. And the fifth one is interpretation, the ability to look at meaning. And finally, reasoning, or the ability to produce arguments and perform research. There is one thing I'd just like to add again, other than all these specific skills, which are the 6 skills. Why are those skills important, and how do we actually get to use them? Well, if you look at the brain and how it's set up, the neocortex represents 50% of the brain, and it has 3 functions: memory, perception, and cognitive functions. Now, artificial intelligence has won the memory battle a long time ago with human intelligence. Then perception, you now see artificial intelligence doing facial recognition, doing smell, touch. So again, it's getting there. It's not there yet completely, but it's getting there. The third is cognitive functions, led by critical thinking, is an area that the brain will still continue to compete with machines, and it's still an area that human beings can actually use to sit on top of artificial intelligence and control it. And that is why these skills are really important.
I have a question from myself. Have you ever heard about 2 types of mindsets? So I've read a book by the Stanford psychologist. It's called Mindset, the Psychology of It. So she's saying that there are 2 types of mindset. One is the fixed mindset, and the other one is the growth mindset. So according to her theory, she's saying that people who accept their failure as a chance to do better, they have the growth mindset. The people who have the fixed mindset, they accept their failure as the end of the world, you know? So there are a lot of controversial reviews on this book. So I just want to know your opinion on this topic, because you're an expert on critical thinking. So they're kind of relatable, right? The critical thinking and the mindset.
Yeah.
They're all coming from one thing, so.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, no, that was my question. What is your opinion on this theory of 2 mindsets?
Yeah, I think this professor has done great work, and other professors like her have also done, like the 6 thinking hats, but all this stuff needs to be scientifically proven and applicable. This is an applicable system. This is a system that you can actually try and use, and we can test and have psychometric analysis to prove that it actually works. So it's not just making claims. This is a system that actually works. Now, if you give me 2 mindsets or 5 hats, this gives you millions of approaches, because that's how the mind works, and that's how every mind works. Because you know, we're only talking right now about how critical thinking can be used individually, but we haven't discussed collective critical thinking. That's a huge area, you know. So I think anyone who tries to deal with this problem, I have a lot of respect for. But all I'm saying is, I don't like monocausal explanations. I like multi-causal explanation, and this is a multi-causal model. This is not a monocausal model. I hope I answered the question.
Are there any more questions in the audience? I think, Salah, you are going to leave us with a lot of food for thought. That was a fascinating delivery. Thank you so much. Please thank Salah. And the next masterclass will be taking place at 2 p.m. So we have an hour free at the moment. So if you're going for lunch, bon appétit. And please come back at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and we will continue this really interesting day. Thank you.